and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 394, and today's date is June 18th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Iraq is in Chaos, and the U.S. attack on Syria is inevitable. And what do we know? We understand that all hell has broken loose inside Iraq. Of course, we have these ISIL Sunni group that has been terrorizing the entire nation. At least that's what the corporate media is saying. Well, we're seeing something a little different, and we're seeing reports now coming out of Mosul and many of the other cities that it might not be as bad as the corporate media is playing up. They are really pushing terrorism. They are really pushing we need to go in with airstrikes. They are really pushing that this is a dire situation. They are really pushing that these terrorist acts will hit Europe, UK, United States, and they're coming hard and fast, and we need to make our moves. And right now what we're seeing is that the United States, the UK, and many other nations are all making preparations to invade Iraq and then directly go to Syria, because they are making the links right now, and they're using the propaganda to let everyone know that this is all part of the same exact thing that's happening in Syria. These groups have come from Syria, and they're trying to make the case that yes, we will be going into Syria to get these groups, and this is exactly what they are using right now. This is the propaganda they're using right now, and we can see that this is going to ramp up as these ISIS or ISIL or Sunnis move through Iraq and capture Baghdad, at least try to capture Baghdad. They have already captured an oil refinery right outside of Baghdad. They're headed towards Baghdad right now, and once the oil production stops, this is when the central bankers say, all right, we're done here, we're going in, one way or another. Now, how can they get into Iraq and then eventually into Syria? Well, they would have to make the case to Congress and have Congress to declare war, and this way they'd be able to send in troops into the area. Or there can be some type of an event that makes it look like the terrorists that they're calling them inside of Iraq have attacked the United States or UK or any other nation or all these nations at once. And right now what we're seeing is that they are definitely building up to that event. That's why they're continually out there saying that ISIL, ISIS, these terrorists are coming after us. You hear them on the news spouting the propaganda, and they're using this to make everyone believe that there's going to be like another 9/11 or something that's going to happen, and it's going to come from this group, and this is what's going to happen, and once it does, we will need to get into Iraq. Now, we understand that this event was coming for a very long time. This is nothing new to everyone that has been listening. This has always been the same, and they're going to try to blame this on another country, another group, or country group combination, and this is what they're trying to create at this moment. Let's get into the economic collapse news. We'll discuss a little bit more about this a little later in this report, but let's see what's going on here in the United States. Now, I speak about real estate quite a bit. I mean, pretty much almost every report I just talk about real estate and how it's collapsing, imploding, and we are definitely seeing that. When I say they, it's the central bankers, United States government, are always out there telling us how we're improving, recovering, everything's getting better, and of course I talk about the opposite. And what we are actually seeing from the economic indicators, yes, we are imploding. And we see that real estate and the Mortgage Bankers Association has been telling us that the mortgage application activity, which includes both refinancing and home purchases demand, fell another 9.2% in the week ended June 13th. It is not getting better. Real estate is starting to collapse. We are in the hot season for real estate. This is it. If it's falling like this during this period of time, what is going to happen when we move out into August, September, and down into Christmas? The entire real estate market is going to completely implode on itself, and it's going to be a disaster, and they know it. And this is why they are ramping up all of this right now, and this is why we're seeing this event going to occur, because they do not want to be blamed for this collapse whatsoever. They need to blame it on a different group or country, and you could see they are building up for this nonstop. Of course, the Fed was out there today saying, oh, yes, we are in a recovery. It's a slow recovery, but we're in a recovery. Seems like everything's going to go perfectly. We just have to adjust a couple of numbers here. We're going to change our GDP growth from 2.8 or 3% in March back down to maybe 2.1 to 2.3%. Well, I'm going to tell you it's going to be much lower than that. And they have tapered again another $10 billion. So now the bond buying is down to $35 billion monthly pace from $45 billion. And we can see they're continually keeping up this illusion because they want you to believe that this recovery is definitely coming. And we know for a fact it's not. And we can see from what is going on around the world, it is completely falling apart. Now, China is building up its renminbi capital pool to ready itself for competition in the offshore finance market. The Central Bank of Republic of China launched domestic banking units for the Chinese currency in February last year and is increasing the amount of deposits. And now Putin's advisor is saying that he proposes an anti-dollar alliance to halt U.S. aggression. Glaziev, this is the advisor to Putin, said that what they need to do is they need to pretty much create a broad anti-dollar alliance of countries willing and able to drop the dollar from their international trade. Members of the alliance would also refrain from keeping the currency reserves in dollar-denominated instruments. An anti-dollar coalition would be the first step for the creation of an anti-war coalition that can help stop the U.S. aggression. So what we're seeing right now is that Russia and many other nations are going to get together and say, you know what, let's drop the dollar, and let's get other countries to join in and drop the dollar, and let's remove it from our reserves. This is not a good thing, and I've been repeating this over and over. When these countries decide they do not need the dollar and they remove it from their reserves, that dollar will flood back to the United States, and it will decrease the value of our dollars here in the United States. And when we see this decreased value, we are going to see prices on goods go up. And this is going to lead to hyperinflation, and people will not be able to buy anything. This is why you need to prepare with food, because you don't want to be caught up in that instance when all of a sudden you wake up one day and you say, you know what, let me go out and buy a gallon of milk. Whoa, $9. Where did this come from? And this is exactly what's going to happen. I remember back, and I think I said this once before, when I was younger and we had the gas crisis, pretty much we woke up one day and they're telling us there's a shortage, and there were lines of cars waiting to fill up. You couldn't even go every single day. Most of the gas stations said they couldn't even get the fuel. Of course, we know it had nothing to do with gas shortages, but it happens very, very quickly. This is going to happen very quickly. All of a sudden, you're going to see prices rise. The next day you're going to wake up, it's going to rise again, because as more and more countries dump the dollar, it's going to lose value. Now, like I said, the central bankers, U.S. government, they're not going to take the fall for this. They're not going to be blamed for this collapse. And you can see already that the central bankers are setting up another group, another country for the economic collapse. Of course, the central bankers are making it look like we're in a recovery, everything's great, we're on the cusp of everything beautiful. And right now, IMF Lagarde, she's out there saying that Iraq oil shock may threaten the U.S. economy. The ongoing turmoil in Iraq has the potential to throw a wrench into the U.S. economy, where they're in a recovery now, and bring it to its knees. Now, why would they be saying this? Because if the people in Iraq, the ISIS Sunni group, takes control of Iraq and gets rid of the central bank and sells that oil, not using the U.S. dollar, that's going to be a problem, because we see it happening in Libya already, we see it happening in Yemen already, and Lebanon is right there. So when this happens, this is going to be the major problem, and this is what they're talking about. And they're already starting to say that because of Iraq and what's happening there, this is going to be the problem for the economy. This is why the economy didn't survive, but this is furthest from the truth. The economy was going down before, and now, because of what is happening, it just says, okay, look, the economy was never recovering. We were always heading to the same spot. We just got there a little bit faster. And this is why the central banks, the U.S. government, has been trying to prop the economy up for as long as they have, because they need to get something started to have this completely blamed on another group or another country. And this is exactly what they're doing right now. Now, there are polls out there saying that pretty much the American people have lost faith in Obama. They also say we do not want to go to war whatsoever. We should not be in Iraq. We should not be in Ukraine. We should have nothing to do with Syria. We shouldn't even be in Central Africa. And right now, a majority of Americans lost faith in President Barack Obama's ability to lead the country, according to the result from the Wall Street Journal NBC News poll. Well, we can see that because the economy is suffering. People who don't have jobs realize that this is not getting better. They're sending out resumes. They're going to stores trying to find jobs. They see retail stores closing down. They see strip malls, empty stores being vacated because they're closing down. You see the real estate market completely collapsing. People selling their homes, all of a sudden they're scratching their heads going, why do I have to lower my price? Why aren't people coming? What's going on here? I don't understand this. We see thousands of people being laid off in the mortgage departments. It's all starting to fall apart. This is why they're ramping up the wars in Ukraine and in Iraq, and they really need to set off World War III before the whole thing starts coming down. Now, they're also building up the case of those people who are anti-government, and this all started in Nevada, but of course they've been saying they've been looking at this for 6 months, and they're calling them sovereign citizens. These are the people that have anti-government views, that don't believe the federal laws apply to them, and they can do whatever they want, and they're trying to make them look like homegrown extremists, domestic terrorists. And right now, a 60-year-old California man calling himself a sovereign citizen was accused of shooting a Bureau of Land Management agent and a California Highway Patrol. So they are building this up, and they're trying to show you that these people who don't exactly have the same viewpoint as the government are dangerous, because they're going to be out there shooting officers, Bureau of Land Management officials, and anyone else that comes in their way. And we know that they're building up the case here. They're trying to show everyone, and eventually what they're going to say is, if you know anyone that's a sovereign citizen who doesn't believe in the government, who has anti-government views, you need to report them. And you can see this just going down the path here and where they're taking this, because we already know that Eric Holder, the Department of Justice, has created the Homegrown Extremist Task Force. They're coming after these people. They're taking the data from NSA, Fusion Center, all those social profiles, the list they created, and they're getting ready to use them. Why do you think DHS has been purchasing billions of rounds of ammunition? Why do you think local enforcement has been receiving technology to spy on people, tanks, ammunition, weapons, military garb? Why do you think they're doing all this? Because they realize when this system comes crashing down, they're going to have to go and find these people who are a threat to their authority. And this is exactly what is happening. And this is going to end up pretty darn bad, because when the economy starts falling apart and the value of the dollar decreases quite a bit, it's going to take a lot of Americans by surprise. They're going to wake up one morning and go, what just happened? I don't understand this. I had a job a day before. I don't have a job now. Why are the prices going up? Why can't I get anything? Why are people raiding the supermarkets? Why are people running around in the streets? This doesn't make sense to me. And people will not be able to handle this. They're going to have a very tough time. Pretty much, it's almost like in the Matrix when somebody learns that something that you believed in for a very long time is not real. deal and they find out that everything has been completely, you've been completely lied to all this time and everything just falls apart, they're going to pop. And when these people pop, it's not going to be easy for them, and they're going to take it out in all different ways. And most of them are going to become desperate because they need to feed their families. They're not going to have the cash that they thought they had. They're not going to have the water or the supplies they need to survive. And this is when things get very, very dangerous. And this is why DHS will be activated. This is why local law enforcement is going to come into compliance with DHS. And you're going to see a whole different side of DHS at this point. And this is why you need to stock up on your supplies and have weapons to defend yourself when this goes down. Now, out in Ukraine, what is happening is we see that Moscow would like to have new gas talks, but first Kiev needs to clear up its debts. And we can see right now that Kiev is not really going to clear up its debts right now. Pretty much they don't want to have anything to do with Russia. They don't want to pay the price. They're using the money to secure their borders, to secure more military operations, and bring in more military men. And this is actually what they're using the money for. And also they're probably lining their pockets in the meantime while all this is going on. Now, we understand that a pipeline in Ukraine did burst, exploded, and Ukrainian government is saying that this was an explosive device. We're sure of it. Now, Russia, Gazprom, is saying, well, we lowered the pressure, and because of lack of investment by Ukraine into its gas transportation system, it kind of exploded, and this was the reason, because they really didn't keep up with their gas pipes. And they're saying that Ukraine owns the gas transportation system, and they don't. They only handle the gas going in, so it's Ukraine's responsibility to maintain all these gas pipes, and they didn't, and this is why it exploded. But of course, Ukraine is out there saying that this was an explosion, and what is the truth? Who really knows at this time? And it seems like more of a plausible answer that the gas piping was degraded, they lowered the pressure, something went off, but who knows at this point. Now, in Ukraine, in the southeastern section, there was a temporary truce. A truce has been established for some time in the region to remove wounded and dead soldiers. And as soon as this went into effect, what happened? Well, Kiev forces bombed the village after declaring a truce. A spokesperson for the breakaway Lugansk People's Republic said on Wednesday evening that the truce between government forces and militiamen is over now. The Ukrainian army has again started pulling its forces into a suburb of Lugansk. They fired, they were bombing the village, and the truce is completely over now. Poroshenko, his idea is, yes, we would like to have peace here. Please surrender all your weapons. Please surrender while we keep the forces initiated at the border of the southeast, and you can give all your weapons in, and you can come into the fold of Ukraine at this point. That's his peace talk. And of course, the people in the southeast region said, no, we're not going to do that, because that's kind of a trick, and you're not going to give us peace. What you're probably going to end up doing is killing all of us, which I completely agree. If they want to see peace, start pulling back both places. Kiev forces, move back. Donetsk, move back, and then you can have some talks. But we don't see that actually happening at this time. Now, Ukraine is looking to declare martial law in the southeast region. And of course, what they're saying is that this is not going to help the situation. It is going to make it worse. And I agree. Once the government of Ukraine says to the Donetsk southeastern region that we're going to declare martial law, what do you think the people are going to do? You think they're going to abide by the martial law? No, they think of themselves as independent, separate and apart from the puppet regime, and they're going to rebel. It's going to make the situation much, much worse. Now, Iran has concerns about the P5+1 deal. They're not sure if all those nations are going to adhere to the agreement. I don't see why not. I mean, let's take a look at what's happened. The U.S. government told us that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Oh, wait, they didn't. They showed us, the little vial of powder. They showed us satellite photos. Well, that turned out to be a lie. So I could see why they wouldn't trust him. Wait, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, we had testimony that they were killing babies and incubators. Oh, wait, that turned out to be false also. How about in Ukraine? Yes, United States, Russia, Germany, they all signed the peace deal with Yanukovych. They said, okay, it's a ceasefire. They're going to talk about it. Oh, 24 hours later, they went back on that deal, and they pretty much kicked Yanukovych out of office, and they had the coup d'etat in Ukraine. So I can't understand why they wouldn't believe that they would adhere to the agreement. And this is, their concerns are very much understandable that they wouldn't adhere to this, because so far what we've seen is they really don't adhere to anything. They do whatever they want. Okay. Now, we understand that there's a lot of terrorist attacks in Kenya. We see terrorist attacks in Nigeria with Boko Haram. We saw in Kenya with Al-Shabaab. And right now there was another terrorist attack in Kenya. And what is happening is there were 60 people that were killed in the region, and they're saying it is Al-Shabaab in Kenya. But the witnesses in this area are saying, no, it was a white man speaking fluent English who was in charge of the whole entire operation, which gunned down at least 60 people in Kenya. So, can you say that this is some type of false flag where they're trying to blame it on Al-Shabaab and it was completely ginned up to make it look like it was them? Because the witnesses there say, no, it was a white man. He was speaking fluent English. He also spoke in different languages. He instructed the people what to do, and this is what we're getting out of that situation. So we can see all of this is created to make everyone believe that all of this is happening, that terrorists are all around us. They use this to move into countries. And when I say they, I mean the United States government and the central bankers. Now, we understand in Libya, everything is completely falling apart there also. The people of Libya have gained control of the oil ports, the refineries, most of the country. We have this rogue general running around in Libya. And what's been happening is the people of Libya are smuggling out large amounts of fuel, and these are not being priced in dollars. And this phenomena is a threat to Libya and affects national security. This is coming from the government of Libya. Of course it affects national security because the United States central bankers use this type of speak to say, listen, we need all the oil to be priced in dollars, because if people out there can buy it without using dollars, we are in big, big trouble. The dollar's not going to make it, and this is why it's national security. Libya has suffered from smuggling of fuel into neighbors, but this has mostly been via land borders, and they're starting to see it move across the sea now, and this is a huge, huge problem. And the whole entire Middle East right now is completely falling apart. The United States central bankers have lost control, and we can see that all these groups and the people inside the countries are really rising up at this time. Now, Iran is saying that they're not going to deploy troops in Iraq. The Iranian military top brass says the Islamic Republic will not deploy forces to neighboring crisis-hit Iraq, suggesting that Arab country is itself capable of defeating the terrorists, the ISIS, the ISIL group inside the country. So they're not bringing in military troops into the area at this time. Now, I understand the corporate media shows a lot of terrorism going on in Iraq, and they continually broadcast this of all the horrific events. But what I really realized is that Maliki has pretty much done the same thing, but we never saw anything on the corporate media. And the question is, why not? Why? Because he's part of the puppet regime. The United States controls him, so they're not going to show you what he's been doing. Back in December of 2013, he waged a full-scale military attack against residential areas with heavy artillery. tanks, and Air Force. Residential neighborhoods came under shelling. Hospitals, schools were all damaged. Hundreds of civilians killed and injured when they did this attack. Maliki forces dragged the dead body of a young tribesman by tying his legs to a military vehicle around the village. People were having peaceful protests, and they were organizing, saying, we don't want this. We want human rights. You have to treat us with respect. And Maliki's forces went out there, and they cracked down on the protesters. They killed many of the people, and we never heard any of this. None of this was heard. He went on a rampage in many of the towns and villages. He killed 69 people in Fallujah. 31 were women, 39 were children. Another 413 were injured, among them 19 women and 44 children. Those victims are all from the civilian population. However, the figures seem to be higher. The Red Cross was in there. They were looking at the situation, and a lot of the families, about 34,000 families, had to flee the area because of what was going on. He handles the civilian population with brutality. He goes around the country taking people at night into prisons, and they are never seen again. And of course, Maliki forces is completely out of control during this time period and other times, and this is a completely against Article 3 of the Geneva Convention. But we didn't really hear any of this from the corporate media. Why? Because the United States government central bankers are controlling Maliki. He is a puppet government, just like Ukraine. That's why we don't hear about the paid mercenaries in Ukraine taking out the people and killing the innocent civilians in Ukraine. The same thing that happened in Odessa in the office building, where they shot people in point-blank range. We see the same thing happening in Iraq. We see the same thing happening in Libya. We see the same thing happening in Yemen. Actually, the United States is using drones to fire upon civilians, and they are killing many, many civilians. It's just amazing to me how the propaganda is being ginned up for the problem in Iraq now, when there was already a problem. Now, I'm not saying the situation will get better. I think it's complete chaos in Iraq. I don't see it getting better whatsoever. I see that there is a group, and they're treating some people nice and other people not. I see that they're intertwining with Sunnis, and a lot of Saddam Hussein's troops are joining into this fight. And this is a complete, total, chaotic situation in this country, because nobody's going to benefit from this, because what's going to happen is the United States government, the UK, are going to come in there, boots on the ground, Air Force flying in, and pretty much kill a lot of people. It's not going to be good for anybody. Now, in the news, we see that that this ISIS group and ISIL group was trained at a secret Jordan base. Now, we knew this. We knew, if you listen to me in my past reports, I've been saying for a very long time that paid mercenaries have been trained in Jordan at secret bases. And yes, they have been trained. But you have to remember, they've been training them to go into Syria to remove Assad. And of course, they thought in their heads, because they vetted them, that they weren't part of any type of Al-Qaeda, or they didn't have any other type of motivations, which is absolutely ridiculous. These people were getting trained to do something else, and the something else was not going after Assad. The something else was going into Iraq, and then eventually moving into different areas. And we can see right now the officials said dozens of ISIS members were trained at the time as part of a covert aid to the insurgents targeting the regime of Assad. The Jordanian officials said all ISIS members who receive U.S. training to fight in Syria were first vetted for any links to extremist groups like Al-Qaeda. Well, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, of course, they can lie. They don't have to tell you the truth of what they're really doing. Now, what's happening here is that all of this is taking place. Yes, these groups are made up of ISIS, they're made up of Sunnis, and they're made up of Saddam Hussein's soldiers that were once loyal to him. And this group now is going through the country and attacking each one of these cities, and in some of the regions they are making things better for the people. And some of the reports coming out are saying that, in the weeks since it captured Iraq's second largest city, Mosul, a Muslim extremist group has tried to win over residents and has stopped short of widely enforcing its strict ban of Islamic law. Residents say churches remain unharmed and street cleaners are back at work. Getting around is easier now that much despised blast walls and security checkpoints are gone. The governor of Ninja province, of which Mosul is the capital, told the Associated Press this week that the Islamic State was helped in its conquest of the city by loyalists to Saddam Hussein, now outlawed Ba'ath Party, as well as fighters from the army of the men of, I'm going to try to pronounce this word, Nazgabandi order. The people who are fighting inside Mosul are from groups who have their own political views, who didn't get an opportunity to participate in the government the last few years. When the U.S. military occupied our city about 10 years ago, they were liberators. When ISIL took control, they were liberators. Saif said, "We are fed up with these liberations. We just want to live in peace. We don't want this anymore." There's also reports out there saying that this ISIL, Sunni loyalist Saddam Hussein groups have advanced weaponry. Well, they received the advanced weaponry from their training, of course, from the United States. Some of them brought them over into Iraq. And we also see that when the Iraqi army ran off, they dropped their equipment. And the ISIS, Sunni loyalists to Saddam picked up all this equipment. They got tanks, they got missile systems, they got pretty much everything, and they have a lot of it right now. Now, we understand this group is making its move. They're heading towards Baghdad. They've already captured Baji, the refinery there. They have control of it at this time, and all government officials, they're all out there, and they are saying that we need to go in there with airstrikes, with boots on the ground. We need to stop them. Of course, they're capturing the oil refineries. Once they capture the oil ports, once they capture Baghdad, you'll see the central bankers, U.S. government, and other nations saying, this is it, we need to go in there. Of course, the Iraqi ambassador to the United States is warning that the Islamic extremists overrunning his country will commit ethnic cleansing unless Obama administration helps stop them. It's always the worst case scenario, and they're using these scare tactics to get into Iraq, and they're going to do this no matter what, and we can see that right now. Now, all the major oil companies are bringing a lot of their staff home. They're getting very worried. They're leaving a skeleton crew there to keep operations going. But we can see that things are completely falling apart, and falling apart very quickly. And pretty soon you'll see the skeleton crew of people that are left there. They will be removed also. Now, David Cameron is out there, and he's making the case that we just can't say that this has nothing to do with us, because it has everything to do with us. And he's trying to convince the people of England that we need to go into Iraq and we need to stop this. Prime Minister says problem in Iraq, as well as Somalia, Nigeria, and Mali, could hit us at home. The crisis in Iraq must not be dismissed as nothing to do with us, as the Islamic jihadists are also planning an attack in the UK. They are using fear to convince everyone we need to go to war once again. Of course, Dianne Feinstein is out there, and she's saying, yes, we need to go to war with Iraq, and then since we're there, why don't we just head over to Syria? And of course, the American people are completely against war. And we're having the same situation that occurred during Syria, when they used the false flag event saying that we need to get into this area. And they're saying that that the American people at that time didn't want to go to war. Congress saw this and they said, "Oh, we really don't want to vote on this because, we're screwed if we vote one way, we're screwed if we vote the other way." And of course, all of a sudden, John Kerry spouted out, if Assad removed his chemical weapons, we would be satisfied and everything would be okay. But we could see from that point on, nothing was okay because that wasn't their real agenda. Their real agenda was to remove Assad. And of course, John McCain, he's also ready for war. All these people, they love war. They want to go to war. Let's go to war. So you know what? All these people who are voting for war, who want to go to Iraq, I say we put them on the front lines. I've said this many times before, but here we are today. Let's put Dianne Feinstein, her husband, her children, dress them all up. They're on the front lines. McCain, bring your wife, your daughter. You're on the front line. And whoever else wants war, raise your hand. We're bringing you to the front line, just like back in the old days when the leaders, ran out and said charge. You are going to do the same thing, because if you want war so much, you need to participate in it. You just can't sit behind your desk and call the shots. You need to be out there to show everyone that you are the true leaders, that you really support this war. And guess what? Most of them most likely will not do it. Now, we understand that President Obama's looking to bomb Iraq with an airstrike, and right now he has the CIA out there doing some intelligence gathering on the situation. The U.S. intelligence agency, the CIA, as well as the agency's espionage, other working hard to gather enough intelligence tasks to help to carry out an action possible military or covert operations directed against the leaders of the ISIL, ISIS, Saddam Hussein Sunni group, who took control of large tracts of land inside Iraq and now have the oil refinery. So the CIA is looking to see what they can do, and if they really go in with airstrikes at this point, they are going to kill a lot of innocent people, probably much more than what they're claiming ISIL and ISIS has done so far. And again, these are claims. I know there's pictures, but there's really no authentication of that these pictures are real, because many of the pictures that are coming out, a lot of people have been proving that these are photoshopped. They're not real, because you have to think back when they told us that babies were dying in incubators, and they actually had a woman testify in front of Congress, and she was crying, and turns out that this was completely fake. The woman was the ambassador's daughter to Kuwait, and she was testifying, and we found out that all this was fake. The weapons of mass destruction to get us into Iraq, again, was fake. So a lot of times they use a lot of fake information, just like the false flag events for mass shootings. It's all part of the same scheme. Now, what's very, very interesting is that Reid is out there, Senator Reid. He's out there, and he says the following: "I do not support in any way putting our men and women in the midst of this civil war in Iraq." I thought it was a terrorist group. Now we're in a civil war. Very interesting. Was that a slip of the tongue? Is there really two sides now fighting for the country, or is it terrorists? Which is it? They're getting very confused now on what they're talking about. Now, Obama is out there. President Barack Obama on Tuesday asked congressional leaders to meet with him Wednesday as he considers his option in Iraq. Administration officials tell us the president will make the case for sending a limited number of special forces to Iraq, because that's not really boots on the ground. They're special forces, so we can't count them as military men and boots on the ground, which I don't see the difference. The president has insisted he did not want to put boots on the ground in the newly flaring conflict, but now believes special forces are necessary to develop better intelligence on the Sunni insurgents should airstrikes be ordered. Obama also wants an up-close assessment of the fighting strength and will of the Iraqi forces in and around Baghdad. They are getting nervous. U.S. military assets in and near Iraq. This is what the United States right now has in the area. They have 6 warships in the Persian Gulf, including the aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush, a cruiser, 3 destroyers, and amphibious transport ships, the USS Mesa Verde, which is carrying about 550 Marines, and 5 V-22 Osprey hybrid aircraft, about 5,000 U.S. soldiers across the border in Kuwait. They include the 2nd Brigade, 4th Infantry Division, a combat aviation brigade, and other support troops. They have F-15, F-16s, F-22s, B-1 bombers, C-130 cargo planes, and A-10 attack jets, intelligence gathering and surveillance assets, including drones in the region. All of this has been set. The stage has been set. They are getting ready. You know what's coming. They will create an event to make it easier on themselves to get into this country. Unless Congress just says, you know what, yes, we give you permission to go into the country. But I see right now what's happening. The people of the United States are saying, no, we don't want war. We're not for this. We shouldn't be there. And of course the central bankers saying, we must be there. National security, we have to go in. And once we go in, we're going to Syria. Because that's where that's what our mission needs to be. We need to get Assad out of there. And what's happening right now is that they're using this terrorism, that they're going to be coming for UK, they're going to be coming for the United States, and they're using this propaganda over and over and over. And we can see right now that they're making the case that ISIS and ISIL are moving military equipment into Syria. They're connecting the two to make it seem like, yes, we need to go into Syria and follow this group and get rid of them. And this is what they're trying to build up right now. And of course, they have left the chemical weapons inside Syria. And this was done on purpose because the treaty right now is live and ongoing. Once they show that Assad has used chemical weapons, the treaty is null and void, and they will be going in. And right now, the Obama administration on Tuesday called for the chemical arms watchdog to consider assertive steps in response to delays in the chemical disarmament operation. Syria has deliberately frustrated the Council's efforts to complete destruction by June 30th. The OPCW will need to acknowledge that Syria has not met its obligations to remove these dangerous materials, and this treaty is null and void. You can see the path they're going down. And right now, in Italy, they've seized weapons of mass destruction. Custom officers in the northern Italy port of La Spezia have identified a shipment from China found materials that could be used to make weapons of mass destruction. The materials, addressed to a non-existent Lebanese company, were found in 9 containers on a merchant ship from China and were destined for use in Syria. So they are building up this propaganda. The war in Iraq is going to spread into Syria. This is when it gets crazy, because Russia will be coming in on this war. And we have to remember, to get us into this war and to blame it on another country, they will need to create some type of an event. This will be the easiest way to start a war. They've been building up the propaganda of 9/11. They've been building up the propaganda of jihadists. They've been building up the propaganda of Al-Qaeda breaking off in lone wolf groups. They've been building up the propaganda that Syria was the launching pad for all these terrorists. And you can see where they are headed. They are headed right into Syria and into Iraq, to move into Syria. And they will create some type of event, because they will show that this group created the problems here in the United States. They brought down the economy. They blacked out some of our cities. And they committed, jihad on the United States. And we need to go after this group. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.